Hey everyone, welcome to channel Qtomation. In previous session, we have started with framework creation tutorials for REST assured API automation. In our last session, which was introduction session for framework creation, we were trying to understand need of API automation framework, its importance of automation framework, what are the different phases of creating API automation framework. So we have seen there are around 6 phases to create API automation framework. The very first phase is understanding requirements and APIs. So before starting the creation of framework, we should always understand APIs which we are going to automate, how they are aligning with the business requirements, what are the different type of test data which is required, and overall functionality of those APIs. So it's very important to understand those first, and that is the first phase of creation of API automation framework. So why understanding requirements and APIs is important? So before creating any type of framework, we should first gather and review business requirements and testing goals. You will get API information in the form of documentation. So it can be a Swagger documentation, or it can be also Postman collection, which will contain all the APIs, request payload, endpoints, request, response, all the information which we require that will be present in that Postman collection, or it can be a Swagger or Open API documentation. Once you receive that, we have to identify all the API endpoints that needs to be tested. What are the type of methods it contains? For example, get request, post, put, delete, and other type of request, whichever part of that collection. We should also note required input parameters, headers, authentication required, and expected responses. We have to understand different type of response codes and possible error scenarios. If you have any queries or unclear points, we should clear those with developers, product owners, or API designers. The main goal is you should understand all the flows, all the APIs clearly before automating them. We should also list out which APIs and use cases are in the scope of automation. Then we can create test cases which needs to be automated in some form of sheet, and after that we have to test API once manually as well to understand different flows, scenarios, negative cases, and edge cases that can be automated. So this is basically first phase of creation of API test automation framework. That is understanding the requirements, understanding APIs, testing out those manually first, and then going for the next phase. So now what we will do, we are also going to check some test sample APIs which we are going to automate. We will take 4 such APIs. So there are multiple free APIs are available which we can test it out. So one of the website is gorest.co.in. So in our previous sessions also we have considered this API earlier. So this is the website gorest.co.in. Once you go to this website, you will see they have provided some sample REST APIs and GraphQL APIs. We have to use this REST APIs. So they have provided curl examples for REST API. So they have create user, update user, delete user APIs. So you can simply import this. So you can simply import these APIs in your Postman collection. You can simply copy this curl. Once you copy this curl, you can open the Postman and you can simply click on import. After importing, you can simply paste that curl here. Once you paste it, you just have to copy this curl first and then paste it in Postman import curl. It will automatically create that request in your collection or wherever you want to store it. So I have already imported all these APIs in one of the collection. So I have created one test collection. Inside this test collection, I have these 4 API. What are these 4 API? So let's go through one by one. So now I am just going to manually test this API one by one. So first API is post type of API, that is basically create user API. For this API, request type is post. This is the endpoint. This is a request payload. This is a request payload. In body, we have to add request payload. So we are creating a new user by using this endpoint, post type of request. This is a request body in which we are passing information like name of the user, email of the user, gender, and status of the user. So this is the first API. And one more thing we have to understand is this API has some authentication. This API requires authentication. So if you go to authorization section, we have to select bearer token, and this is the token which we have to pass. So eventually this will be passed in header as well. So in header we are passing this authorization token. But from where we can get this token? So to get this token, we have to go to this website gorace.co.in. Once you go to this website, you will see some option here. Get your access token. Once you visit this website, you can simply click on this get your access token, and then it will ask you to authenticate via GitHub, Google or Microsoft. So you can select any option. If you select Google or GitHub and log in with your account, on the next screen, it will provide you token which you require. So once you copy that token, you can copy that token, and once you copy that token, you have to paste that bearer token here in authorization token. In authorization bearer token, you can simply paste that token. So this is my token. Similarly, you can get the token for your usage as well. So once you get that token, just use it in authorization section, and once you provide that token, you can hit that request. So once you hit this post request, you will see the output. It will create the new user. So let me just hit this request. After hitting this request, you can see this is the response which we have received. What is the status code? 201. This is a status code which says that new resource is successfully created. And in response, we receive one ID. So whatever new user we have created, we get one ID of that user. It is also showing you name, email, gender, and status. Whatever we have passed in our request body, that user gets created with its ID. Now this ID is very important because in next APIs, we are going to use this ID. So just copy this ID. So this is the first API. So what is the first API? First API is create user API, which is a post type of request, which contains request body as well, and one authorization token. That authorization token you can get it from gorest.co.in. You have to just click on get your access token, and then you have to authenticate with your GitHub or Google or Microsoft account. Once you authenticate, you will get that token. and you can use that token in these APIs. And if you hit this API, the new user will get created, and this is the ID of the new user which is created. That means my first test case is passed. So I'm just manually checking my first API. Create user is giving me success here. Now what is the next API? Next is get user by ID. Now what this API will do? So this is a get type of API. This is a get request type. It will be used to fetch the information of that user which is created and have some ID. So in create user, we got this ID. Now I can simply copy this ID and we have to pass that ID into this endpoint. So this is the endpoint of this get API, and in the last we have to pass that ID. So what this will do, it will bring the information, it will fetch the information of the user which is having this ID. So if I hit this URL and if you see the response now, this is giving you success response. What is the status code? 200 OK is the status code, and in the response you will see the information of the user which we have just created by using create user API. So that is our validation point. For this specific ID, it should return the response which contains information of that specific user. So this is the second test case. Now third test case, that is for update user. In update user, we can update the information of the user. So what we have to do, this is the put request type. Normally update APIs are basically put request type which are used to update the existing resource. So existing user which we have created. So what is the ID of that user? This is the ID. So I will just copy this ID. I will go to update user API. In this endpoint, we have to pass that ID. So it will know which user ID information it has to update. And along with that, we have to pass the information which we have to update. So if you see, this is a create user in which name is Jamido, there is email, there is gender, and there is status. So in update user, what I will do, I will just change email and status. I will update the email and status. So here what I will do, I will simply update email. So I will just pass new email ID, let's say, which contains updated keyword. And status also, I am marking it as inactive. Earlier it is active, but I am now updating the status of that user to inactive. So that is the request payload for update API, which will update the information of this user ID with this information. So let's hit this. Now it will give you success response. In the response, you will see email is updated. Status also updated. It became inactive. Status code is 200. And all this API requires authorization. Same token is required for all this API. So that is basically update user test case. And we can again cross verify. So if you want to see, you can simply use this ID in get user by ID. Let's pass this ID here. If you fetch the information, it should give you updated information now. In the response, you can see email is updated, status also updated. That means our update user API working correctly, and it is updating the information of that user. So that is our third test case for updating the user information. And the last, that is delete user API. This is a delete type of API. Request type is delete. Endpoint is similar. We have to pass ID of the user which we want to delete. So here we have created a new user. What is the ID? 95. At the end there is 95. So I'm just using this ID. If you hit this ID by using get user by ID, it will give you information. That means this user is currently present in the system. But after using delete user, it should delete that specific user. So in the URL, I am just passing that ID here. Request type is delete. There is no request body required. Payload is not required because it is a delete type of request. It just require ID of the user which we want to delete. And authorization header is also required. That token is required. And once you hit this, it will delete that specific user. And in response, you will get 204 as a status code. That means this user is successfully deleted. Now, how we can cross verify this? So let me just copy this. Let's go to get user by ID API and let's paste it here. Now we are checking if that user is information present or not. So if you see, when I hit get user by ID API with this user ID, which we have just deleted, it is giving you response that is resource not found. That means our delete API worked perfectly. It deleted the information of this user ID. So these are basically 4 simple APIs which covers create, update, get and delete operation. So for our framework creation, we will use these 4 API. We will use these 4 test cases. Now along these are basically 4 happy flows, 4 happy test cases which we have to automate. Along with that, we can also automate negative cases and edge cases as well. So for framework creation, we are not going to include all the test cases, but we will just pick couple of negative cases as well. So these are the 4 happy test cases, positive test cases which we have to automate. But along with that, let's say I am trying to automate 2 negative cases as well. So get user by ID API. If you pass some non-existent user ID, so let's say I'm just passing some non-existent user ID. This user ID is not present. And if you hit this API, it should give you resource not found with 404 error code. 404 is the response code which says that resource not found. So this also we will verify via API automation. And another test case can be delete user. So here also if I pass non-existing ID of user and if you hit this, it will give you 404 not found with resource not found error. So these are the 2 negative cases which we will check in API automation as well. So total 4 plus 2, 6 test cases we will use in our framework. Our main intention is to develop the framework with all the different type of components and in which we will use limited test cases, but in real time project you can add as many test cases which are in the scope. But once you create the framework, adding test cases becomes very easy. So once you understand all the APIs, so now what we have done, we have understood these 4 APIs. What we have to automate, that also we have understood now. What is the expected responses, that also we have verified. Once you understand all those things, you can simply create one test sheet. So what I will do, I have created one test case sheet. In this test case sheet, I have added the test cases ID, all the test cases which I want to automate. So first one was to verify creation of new user. So this was the first API which we wanted to automate, which will create the new user. So what is the request payload we have used? What is the expected response we should get? Is there any authorization token present or not? What is the endpoint? What is the request type? All this information we can put in this Excel sheet. So what is the test case? First test case is creation of new user. Request type is post. What is the URL? So this is the URL which we have to use. So this is the URL. What is the request body? So in this API we have to pass this request body. What is the expected response? So this is the response which we will be expecting. What is the status code? So 201 is the status code we are expecting. And what is the authentication? If there is any requirement of authentication as well. So yes, it requires bearer token as a authentication. So this is for first test case. Similarly, I have added for all the remaining test cases as well. For example, second test case is getting that user. So second API is get user by ID. So again, all the information. What is the request type? It is a get request type. What is the URL? This is the URL. So if you see, this is the URL up to this point, and after that we have to pass user ID. So user ID can be variable. It can be a variable. User ID is going to be variable. It will keep changing. So whatever user ID is created after hitting this post request of creating new user, that user ID we have to use in this get user by ID API. Request body is not required because it is get type of request. What is the expected response? The user details which we receive in the response for that specific user ID. Status code is 200. For the get API, status code was 200. Again, all the APIs requires token. Similarly, for put means update request. This is the test case to verify updation of information of new user. Endpoint or URL is same. We have to pass user ID. Request body means what is the information we want to update. So for update user, we have to pass payload. In this payload, we can update some parameters. For example, email value we are updating and status we are updating. So that will go into this request body. And after hitting the request, you will get the response. In the response, you will receive this information, that is ID, updated status, updated email, etc. And what is the status code? Let's see the status code again. So let me just create a new user again. So I'm just creating a new user. Now if you see, ID is changed. So I'm just using this ID. Let's go to update user. I'm just using this ID to update this specific user. Let's hit this. And in the response, again, status code is 200. So let's use that value here. 200 is the expected status code. That is for update or put type of request. That is our third test case. Then comes the fourth test case. Deletion of user. Request type is delete. This is the URL. URL is same. Only user ID will change. No request body in delete request. In the expected response, once you delete the user, what you will get? So let's say this user I want to delete now. So I will just copy this ID. I will go to delete user API. I will paste this. Request body is not required. And after deletion, if you hit, you will see in response body there is nothing. But you can verify via status code, that is 204. That is the first validation we can check. And after deleting that user, we can also verify by calling get user by ID API by passing that user ID. And it should give you resource not found because that user is already deleted. So that can be added as a validation point. That is for delete request. Successful deletion of the user. And we can cross verify by calling get user by ID API to see if user is actually deleted or not. Status code is 204 and bearer token is required. Now these are all 4 positive test cases. And as I showed earlier, we can verify some negative test case as well. That if you pass incorrect ID or non-existent ID in get user by ID API, it should give you resource not found with 404 status code. In delete API, if you pass non-existing user ID, it will give you resource not found with 404 error code. Status code. 404 status code will come in the API. So these are basically 2 negative test cases. So this is how we have to analyze all the APIs, decide what test cases we want to automate, and then we can create one Excel sheet like this and we can add those details in this sheet. So these are the 6 cases which I am going to automate by using framework. So this is our first phase which we have to complete. What was the first phase we have seen now? Understanding requirements and APIs. We have understood the APIs. We have manually tested those APIs as well. So all those APIs we have tested via Postman. So all the APIs are working correctly. So we now have idea what we want to automate, what are the expected responses, what are the expected status code, what is the token required, what are the endpoints, what are the request type. All this information now we have completed. Now we can move to our next phase. What is the next phase now? Next phase is selecting the right tool or library and then designing the framework structure. So that we will see in our next session. So we have completed the first phase, second phase and third phase we will check in our next session. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you like this video. Subscribe to my channel, like this video, add comments as well if you want some specific information. Thank you. Thanks for watching this video.